Ben, your speech on Thursday, the 25th at California State University is entitled "When Diversity Becomes a Problem." What do you mean by that, and what kind of reaction? I know there have already been protests at the university. What is this all about?
Well, I mean, they've already been protests. They've increased the amount of security. My understanding is that they have both undercover officers as well as more uniformed officers available because of some of the threats that we've been receiving. The basic premise of the speech is that diversity is not always a good thing, depending on what kind of diversity you're talking about. Diversity of viewpoint is a wonderful thing. Diversity of skin color, who cares? And if that's your chief priority, well, then you end up looking a lot like a racist, because it turns out that some people's skin color is not as important as other people's skin color. That's the basic premise of the speech, but that ticks people off because, of course, if you are a racist, it turns out that being anti-racist makes you angry.
But talking about race, isn't that kind of the third rail of anything in our society? It's just the issue you're not supposed to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is the most controversial issue in America today. And when Eric Holder said we're a nation of cowards on race, he's exactly right. The problem is the cowardice tends to come from the left, and it's acquiesced in by the right. The right tends to go along to get along with all of the myth-making about how America's a deeply racist, horrible country 50 years after the end of Jim Crow. And if you're my age, if you were born in 1984, as I was, the idea that you've been experiencing massive systematic and systemic racism in American society is pure hogwash. If you have an incident in which somebody did something racist to you, let's hear about it, let's hear the specific name, and then let's try and do something about it. But if not for that, then yeah, honestly, you're just blaming all of your problems on the wind. You're blaming it on the ether, and that's a waste of time.
And I should point out, you're on a 10-city speaking tour sponsored by Young America's Foundation. The first one of these speeches was November, Truth is a Microaggression at the University of Missouri. And there weren't really protests there, but it got a huge response. Why, one, do you think you got it's 1 million clicks? That's how many people have clicked in to watch that speech. But why that response, but also what we're witnessing on college campuses nationwide with this kind of anti-free speech reaction to people, say, like you?
Well, I think it's because of the anti-free speech reaction that there was so much reaction to me going to University of Missouri, which was obviously the hot spot for the anti-free speech movement in favor of Black Lives Matter and the rest of it. The fact is that there was some expectation that there might be some protests when I went to University of Missouri, so I think some people watched it live in the expectation that there might be a bit of a ruckus. Somebody did pull the fire alarm a couple of times, but the administration was apparently expecting it. As far as the general anti-free speech movement on campus, this has been going on for a fairly long time, although it's gotten much more extreme in the last few years when the left on campus decided that feelings are significantly more important than facts, and that facts that controvert people's feelings must be immediately banned. They're microaggressions. They require trigger warnings. I'm of the opinion that America is a safe space. You don't need your own magical little socially segregated and racially segregated safe space in order to feel safe in America. And nobody guaranteed you that you would feel like a precious little daisy here. I mean, it turns out there are plenty of people who disagree with you. People disagree with me. That's what it means to live in a First Amendment society. And if you don't like it, get out.
And yet we see what's happened on college campuses and university campuses nationwide. There also seems to be an anti-capitalist message that's taking place. I keep talking about the Revolutionary Student Committee here in New York over at Hunter College, but they talk about seizing the college and then opening the doors for anybody tuition-free without any kind of test to determine if the person is qualified for the coursework. I mean,
well, good luck. Who's going to pay for all that? I mean, are the professors just going to continue to teach for free, and presumably they will then steal from the grocers in order so that they can eat for free, and the grocers will steal from the farmers, and the farmers will starve, and there will be no food? I mean, like, this is what's so stupid about all of this. But when you have an entire generation of people who grew up in an era without the Soviet Union, their model of what socialism looks like isn't the Soviet Union or the Czech Republic or any of the countries under Soviet domination or Cuba. Well, instead what they look at is Denmark and Sweden, and they look at those countries. They don't even bother to look what the tax rates are like or what the lifestyle is like or the fact that we've been paying the freight on their defense budget for the last 50 years. Instead, they tend to look at all of the wonderful things they have in their life and say, these aren't going anywhere. Things will always be like this, so we can just hammer away at the foundations of what made things this good in the first place in the name of fairness and redistribution.
But why do college students seem to buy into this, or at least agree with this? And if I'm wrong, correct me, because I know there are college students who don't, but the vast majority seem to be right behind it.
I think there are a lot of college students who agree with this because when you were in college, you were looking to change the world. This is what happens when you're 18 years old. You think that the world is your oyster and you're going to change it. And when America is a pretty good place, what you end up changing is not necessarily in a good direction. So I think that's part of it. I think part of it is also that we have an entire generation of people who have been trained in public schools and trained without religion to believe that fairness is the only value. And when I say fairness, I mean fairness of outcome, not fairness of opportunity. Equality of outcome is the only thing that matters. So if you see two people in a room, one person is rich, the other person is poor, that's unfair. Reality is unfair. And that feels good in your guts to say it because you realize that that's not fair. But, nobody learned the kindergarten slogan, life's not fair. So instead what they come up with is, okay, well, if life's not fair, then the way to correct that is by making the government bigger and stronger and taking some people's wealth, even though the true unfairness is the idea that you can come to my house with a gun simply because you feel like it and take my money.
And I'm going to start to wrap up, but I have to ask you, why do the campus administrations at universities and at colleges nationwide give into this?
Well, I think a lot of them give into it because they feel like if they give in a little bit at a time, then their donors won't fuss, that they won't have national coverage, the students will leave them alone, and it's easier to fight the students a little bit than it is to fight the other people in the administration, all of whom side with the students. So there's kind of this generalized campus culture of we'll give in to the students will leave us alone, they'll target people elsewhere, and then we can just move on with our lives. I think that sort of willingness to cave is rather disgusting, but unfortunately there are a lot of people who are looking to preserve their jobs.
And yet I just want to read one quote to you from the Truth is a Microaggression speech where you said, "Capitalism is colorblind. The only color that capitalism cares about is green." The people who I suspect are going to be protesting you on Thursday would disagree with you on that. What would you say to them?
Well, I would say that they don't know how capitalism works then. They're probably used to a system in which the government picks winners and losers, and they're under the impression that every business person in the world is a capitalist as opposed to a self-interested human being. Capitalism is a system of free market exchange and competition. It doesn't mean that every single person who has a business or engages in business is a wonderful human being who is colorblind. What it does mean is that if you're not colorblind, you're going to pay the price for that at the cash register.
Last question for you. What's it going to take to get this kind of phenomenon taking place on college campuses to stop, or is it beyond control?
I think the only thing that'll stop this eventually is if the left in America returns to being liberal, but it seems like we're moving in the opposite direction. In the 1980s and 90s, the left in America decided that the PC culture was actually too much and we needed more free speech, not less. It seems like we've moved in the opposite direction now that feelings take precedence over reality.
Ben Shapiro, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.